Good morning, Internet family. I'm trying today to put together a more of a start to finish type video and kind of show you all the detail that goes into preparation to get ready to get on to treatment, and then actually getting on treatment today. And hopefully I'm able to make a good enough video that I can share that. And I'm sorry I don't have any microphones yet. I just have the microphone on my phone, and I'm just hoping this turns out good for you, and hope you're having a great blessed day. This is Papa Don with Living with Hemodialysis. Gotta have my tape over here. I have to have tape for almost everything that you do getting on and doing treatment, so I'm going to try to talk as I go along so that you know what we're doing. This is the filter package, the package that goes into the main system. This is actually the filter that filters the impurities out of your blood and gives you back clean blood. This filter is what your blood actually goes through these lines, through this filter, and then back into your body. And that's what cleans the blood for you. I put that bag over there, and I use that to put all my trash in during the process of treatment. I always have that trash bag taped on the armrest on this side. That's the side that my arm will be that I actually put my needles in when I get ready to hook myself up to treatment. Most people have no idea how much prep work goes into getting ready to be on treatment. It took me about, if I remember correctly, about 9 weeks in training. I had to have some special training because at the time I had to have some extra process that we no longer do, but that took a little bit longer on training. But you have to take your filter, and I always open up all the stuff and make sure that all the little fittings on here, although you're only supposed to have to tighten 2, but I've learned over time that if you don't want to have problems, you want to check all of them. So I go ahead and check all of them. And currently this is a Medline that's on the actual bill that I need. And this Medline is one that I won't use, so I'm going to tie it off. I clip it off and tie it off, because I don't want it to fill with any blood. I don't want it to go in, I don't want it to be a part of the circulation at all. So I want to just ensure that it's closed off. And then I go back and take all the little white tapes that are packing tape to help keep this thing in shipping, and take all of them except for this one that's on this loop. I'm going to leave it on there till very last. But I check all of these. These 2 that are underneath this particular little piece of stuff that's clipped on the line, that's showing you that this one is definitely one that you always want to check. And in training, that's what they teach you, that that's the ones you check. But I check them all. I've had them, each one of them I've had at different times. I've had them fail if I didn't check them. And you take that, that's just a shipping deal to keep those lines in place. And then this is ready for me to take it over and put it in the machine and get ready over here. One of the things that I forgot because I was setting up the camera, I'm supposed to take the machine and open it up and turn it on. It takes it about a couple of minutes, and then it'll be ready for me to put this in. So I'll give that just a few seconds. I have to wait for it to go through some checks, and these lights will flash up here. When it starts flashing 2 white lights on the top up here, that tells me that it's ready for me to go ahead and put the package in. And there it is, it's flashing. It doesn't take long. And it's at this very point here, I go ahead and hook this line up. That's it keeps a regulation and check a pressure check on things. And if you don't have that hooked up when it gets ready to go into treatment, it will alarm. And sometimes these lines just fall out and break just like you want them. And other times you kind of have to finagle them and get them lined out so that they're where they're supposed to be. I use 2 bags of saline for each treatment. I used to use 3, but I don't have to do that anymore. Some days these things will tear right open, and some days I think it has to do with weather and humidity and all that, but some days they just won't tear, so you have to get a pair of scissors and start your cut. And then they'll open right on up. If you notice, I'm using my stool to roll around on, and I use that for as much as possible because it hurts for me to get up and walk. With some parts of it, you just have to get up and walk. And most of the time when I'm walking, I'm either using a cane or I'm using a walker, because my feet and my legs try to just give out sometimes. If you notice, when I'm turning around, I'm trying to keep my hand on something to keep my balance, because that's when I tend to lose my balance, is when I turn around. I have a system that I've worked out. Everything that I do is in steps that reminds me of the next thing that I'm supposed to do. And now I have to check the batch of mix. This tub has got a barrel in it, or a big, you'll see it here in a little bit at the end of the treatment when I pull it out, how big it is. There's 40 liters of mix in there. And actually they make me use a 50 liter because they don't have a 40 liter batch so I use a 50, and at the end of it I have to drain the extra 10 liters off. and then empty that bag out before I can throw it away and start a new batch. But this is running through, flushing air out of all the lines. The saline that's running through there is flushing out all the air, and then there will be a snap and tap on this. But while that's running through its cycles, I will go ahead and check for chlorines and make sure I have a good batch, and then start doing my setup with all of my tape and getting my tray ready. And you'll see as we go along that that's quite a lot of work. I have a medicine cup that is a little bit thicker, heavier duty plastic, because my grip, I have to grip a little harder to feel it because I don't have good feeling in my hands. And I used the cup that they gave me from clinic, and I ended up squeezing it too hard and I crushed it, and it split up the side. And so I washed out this pill bottle because it's about the same quantity of fluids. And it has worked out great as a cup that would be the right size to hold all this. It works out great for being able to test it and use your strip in it, your chlorine test strip that you have to use to make sure that no chlorine has come through the water system and got into your filtration batch, into your dialysate. It takes it about a minute to get ready to dispense when you turn it on to dispense, and then after it starts dispensing, it only takes about 30 seconds, and it will make some more noise and beep, and then I can close the lines up and do my actual chlorine test. That's a timed test, a 1 minute, 60-second timed test. I will take that chlorine test strip and stir it around in the dialysate sample that I'm taking, and if it comes out with a wrong color, it'll tell me there's too much chlorine in this batch for me to use. Okay, there you open your line back up after you connected it back, and you push the button, and that double beep tells you that it's waiting on you to do your actual chlorine test. I've opened up my test strip, and I'm setting my timer. And I'm setting it to 1 minute, starting it, and we'll stir the test strip for 1 minute and wait for the timer to go off. I have a color chart that's hanging inside the door of my, I always take the new color chart when I get a new set of test strips. I take that color chart that comes in it, and it shows you the different colors that the test strip can come out, and you know that the first two are okay to use. If it goes beyond that, you need to notify the clinic that you've got a bad batch, and it may be something that they need to check into, doing something different with your filtration system. In the 3 years that I've been doing this, so far I've never had a bad batch. I've never had a chlorine failure on any of my batches so far. I'm told that this is a very important part of your process. There goes my timer. So we've been stirring that for a minute. Turn the timer off, shake off all the excess. Fold this over so that the white strip is behind the little color tab. Check that against my color strip. If it passes, I'm going to press this green button 3 times. That puts the batch in use So that tells the machine that it's ready for the batch to be used. So at that point, I'm ready to put everything back in place over here. And I've learned to leave my door open at this point, because if I have an issue or problem, I may need to get to this drawer and pull it out. It's very rare, but on occasion I have to get to this and shake the batch or recheck a couple of lines, and that has happened, and that's what it's taken to fix it. So I always have learned to leave my door open during treatment so that I can get to this. I'm now going to start getting my table and my chair further ready for treatment. You will see how important these pads are as the treatment goes along. This provides you with a good sterile place of working and resting my arm while I have my needles in it during the treatment. And the treatment takes about 3.5 hours of actually being in treatment. Leaving that tape down there. And I'm done with my tape for a few minutes. Finished getting this one opened up enough to use up here on the table. And on the tabletop, I've learned that I just unfold it. I don't unfold it completely, just enough so I've got a good, clean, sterile working area on top of the table. There's my gauze that I'm going to need during treatment. And I think I'm ready to move you over, put you a little closer to where the work's going to be during the actual treatment, and kind of maybe zero you in so maybe you can see a little bit more of what's going on. Tell you what, maybe so that the camera will be a little closer, I'll just move the camera up instead of, and maybe that'll put you where you can see more what's going on. Because now I'll be working mainly over here closer to the machine. I take the cellophane and tear me some like 1¼ inch strips. I tear one strip and make 3 pieces out of it. And that gets me enough of those to do 3 treatments, and I take that over my arm. As soon as I get everything ready, you'll see me do that, because I'm going to be putting this lidocaine prilocaine mix cream. It's 2.5 and 2.5 lidocaine and prilocaine topical ointment that helps make it so it doesn't hurt quite so bad to put the needles in my arm. And I'm going to take 2 pieces of tape, and I'm going to put a little fold in the middle of that tape, because as my arm, as you work your arm and your muscle, and it expands, the cellophane has some give to it, but the tape does not. And in order to make the tape so that it has some give to it, I put a little fold, just a little fold in the tape, in the middle. And that piece of tape on the top and the bottom, and that's all the tape that I have to have on this piece of cellophane. And then that will allow that tape to now have some give to it. And if you hear that device going off, that little ringing that you're hearing, that is my blood glucose meter telling me that I'm having a high blood sugar from eating breakfast. And I didn't know if it was going to give me that much this morning because I had a very light breakfast. but obviously it was enough to give me a little bit of a high blood sugar, so we'll see. Yeah, it's at 204 and going straight up. So we probably want to go ahead and take about 15 more units of insulin and see if that slows that down. See, that's the thing, that I'm not just managing my dialysis, I'm also having to manage diabetes as we go here. Okay, we have my arm taped off with the cream and the cellophane to keep me from smearing it all over myself. Keeps it in place for a duration while I finish setting up. And now I have to get out all the needles that I need. And on 5 days out of the week, I only have to have 4 working needles up on the top of the table, and then I have to have 2 working needles up here on top of the machine. They will come into play as I hook my lines up later. The 4 that I place right here are going to hold saline and heparin that I will use during treatment, and the 2 that I place over here are just emergency needles in case I need to draw some more heparin or saline or something to flush a line. I have those readily available. And this is one that I use upon my snap and tap. I will install that up here as an emergency way to take air out of the line if I got air in my filtration line, which I have done that once or twice when I first started, and since then I have not ever had any issues, so it's just a safety, backup safety in case. I try to check every needle when I open it and make sure that the cap is securely on. Sometimes during shipping they will vibrate loose. Sometimes they will vibrate till they come completely off. But as long as you open the bag and put them back together right then, they're still considered to be sanitary. Okay? And that's the thing, we're trying to maintain and keep all of these sanitary. If at any point in time I have to do something where I'm going to touch things that are not up here, that I'm not getting out, then I would take the hand wash and wash my hands again before I continue. Like when I stop and use my pen and do the writing on here, I have to label this one as a saline. The second one is a saline. That's for the 2 lines, the venous and the arterial line that I'll be hooking up. And then I'm going to have a heparin. This would be the one I take at the beginning of my treatment. It'll be 4,000 milligram. This would be a heparin. This one will be 3,000 milligram. And I will take it when I have 2 hours left in treatment. When I've got the first hour and 15, 20, 30 minutes, whatever it's going to take. It varies. But when I get that down to where I have 2 hours left, that's when I take the 3,000 units of heparin. So at this point, I'm ready to get all of my alcohol swabs ready. And I just make sure that I have a good thick handful of these, and I always have a few left over. And I try to use up the leftovers first, and I spread these out. I'm going to need 2 of them on the table, and I'm going to need 3 of them over here. And that will get everything ready for me to go, and this will be other ones that I have to use during treatment. At this point, I'm ready to fill my saline, and I will get the saline out of this hanging bag up here. I put 3 swabs over here. Actually, I got one stuck together, so I have an extra. The first one I'm going to use is to clean this blood sensor line. And I need to check and make sure that I'm still recording, because All right, we're still recording. The next one I'm going to use is that I'm going to fill the first needle with saline, and I clean the entry. This is sanitary, so I don't have to do anything to use it. And I keep that with 7 milliliters, so I've got a little space in the top of that. Clean that off again. Okay, we've been waiting for this to cycle. You want to make sure that this is all 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. You press the silence alarm, and you want a 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then you want it to go to 987 654 321. You verify that, and now it is ready for snap and tap. So I'm just going to let that rest, and it'll just sit there while I finish getting my cart ready. Now I want to get my heparin out, and that's what these other 2 alcohol pads here are for. I'm going to clean the top off of my heparin on the vial, and then I'm going to take this one for 4,000. Take that down to my 4. That puts enough air in there to replace what I'm going to take out. And I push that in, and I do this quick motion, and I've learned that that loosens all the air up, the little air bubbles in the top, so when you tap on it, it readily turns loose. That quick motion that I use to flush that creates enough turbulence in there, keeps all that rolling and makes those air bubbles so they're not stuck in place. If you just kind of gently pull that out, sometimes you have a little air bubble that's stuck in there that just don't want to give way. And generally the only way to get rid of that is to go back and press all of it out completely and refill. And even then sometimes that air bubble doesn't want to give way. But I've learned if I use that quick kind of jerky motion to fill that up, then I can just tap it 1 or 2 or 3 times and all the air bubbles are gone. And I have a clean needle ready to put that medicine into the system. So that's just a little trick that I've learned that I developed myself as time went on, and I learned how I was doing this. Now all the tape that I put, this tape that I put on here is to keep this tape that I'm hanging on here in a sterile environment. And this is tape that I'm actually going to use to secure my lines in place so that my arterial and vascular line do not want to try to come out of my arm during treatment. If they come out prematurely, you're just going to be having blood go everywhere and have a big mess to clean up. And when I run out of tape, I just throw the rest of that in there. I always want to make sure that I have a second roll that's in backup. I took out my backup roll because I knew I was going to run out here shortly. So I've got my backup roll hanging on the side of the chair over there. And I always want a backup roll that I can readily get to in the top of the drawer that's ready to go, so that if during treatment, for some reason, I were to drop my roll of tape and it was to roll across the floor where I can't reach it because I'm already taped in place and have my lines tying into the machine, then I always want a backup roll that's readily available for me to be able to reach. So I've learned to keep a backup roll that's already ready to go, has my tape peeled and turned back so that I'm ready. And each one of these I pull out and I turn back the top of the tape, that top little turn, so that when I put this on my arm, I've got a tab that I can reach to and pull it back off. See, I just dropped that roll of tape. Fortunately, I'm not tied to my machine yet. I'm able to pick this up and continue going with it. But if I was to drop it while I was in the middle of my treatment and I needed more tape, and I have dropped it in treatment, but the whole idea of this is if an old man like me can learn how to do this, then you can learn how to do it too if you're needing to be on dialysis. And at the very least, if you want to be on dialysis and actually go in clinic, they will do all this for you in clinic. But it's still basically the same process. You have to have all your stuff set up. It has to be taped in place, and somebody has to monitor your system, if you're going in center. But because I have to do 6 days a week, and in center you can only get 3 days a week, it's better for me and works better for me to go ahead and do my own. Now everything that's on that side over there is what I use in going on. That's my prep for going on. And everything that I'm putting on this side is what I use to make my pressure bandage, because when I get done, when I take a needle out, I'm going to have to hold pressure on it for about 15 minutes, and then I'm going to have to put a pressure bandage on it to hold more pressure on it for the next 4 hours, so that it ensures that the bleeding has stopped, and then I can take that off, and at that point I'm able to go and take a bath or go ride my bike or whatever. Actually, I can go ride my bike with the bandage on there, but it has to be in conditions where I'm not going to become sweaty. It has to be pretty cool outside. If I get sweaty and sweat that bandage off and start bleeding again, it can be a real problem. Fortunately, I have started bleeding again, but it would be right after I get up and start moving around, and I just have to sit down and hold pressure on it again for a little while, and then when it stops bleeding, it takes 9 of these strips for me to be able to come off and put my bandage on securely. So I have 9 of these strips ready to go. And then I have an extra strip that I use that helps me to get my tape ready for getting on treatment. To get my, these will be the little button pads that I make, and you will see that I'll put them in the tape later towards the end when I'm coming off of treatment. But I have to get those ready while I'm right now able to still move. And in order to put the cotton out, the little cotton pads out, the sterile gauze is what it is, or non-sterile gauze. I lay my mask out at this point, and these are just some little checks and balances that I do. At this time, I put all the extra stuff on the top of my tray. This is my blood sensor that I will connect to my arm here when I start hooking myself up. And I have that package pre-opened, so it's easy for me to do when I already have needles in my arm. And then You don't want to be trying to make these little pads up to use when you're coming off with needles in your arm. So you want to get these made up before you have to come off. And I take 4 pieces of gauze. That one stuck to my finger. I'm going to put it back over there. And 4 pieces of gauze. 4 pieces of gauze. And then I'm going to need 2 more pieces of gauze up here. And then I take this and I go ahead and set this back up here. There is times when I need to have more gauze during treatment, and so I keep those laying there readily available. And I fold these so that all the open or loose ends are towards the inside, and then whenever I tape this off, I don't have any opens or loose ends trying to unfold from the open or not taped side on my stuff here. So I always tape my little pillows. After I get them taped, I set it over there and I get the next one. This is what the extra long piece of tape here that I have that I put out after I put my 9 strips for coming off. And this is what I call my 10th strip, and it's a little bit extra long. And at the end of my treatment, when I'm getting everything wrapped up and ready to throw in the trash, I use the little tail or the little end piece that's left on this to help tape that up into a ball so that it goes in the trash and stays compact and doesn't take up so much room in my trash. Okay, that one that came loose is on the inside, so it's not a problem. Got all the loose ends trapped. I'm going to take that all off so there's no loose ends ready to fly away nowhere. Push that down, fold that one over. And I've learned whenever I'm taking my tape and trying to break the tape, I've learned to take my tape and I put my fingers so that my finger is straight across, and then I put the next finger and then I actually make sure it's pressed to my fingers tightly, and then just roll my fingers apart, and it will break virtually straight every time if you do it that way. So that's just a little trick that I learned on my own as time went along, how to break the tape and keep it where it keeps a good clean straight break. Okay, now then, these 2 little pads that I put over here are the 2 pads that I'm going to use on going on that will actually cover up my needle site whenever I get ready to go and start my treatment. So if my needle bleeds a little bit, it's got a little bit of gauze there to absorb that, and it also, if that gauze starts getting red or too red, it alerts me to the fact that that particular needle site is trying to bleed. And sometimes there's things you can do to help with that, and sometimes it would be, if I've been bleeding bad enough, I just had to stop treatment and go ahead and come off my treatment and wait till the next day to start again. Okay, I have everything here ready. So that that's 3 that I'm going to need when I'm going on. Everything here is now ready. So I'm ready to push this over. Then I have a process. I want this on my table. That's one. I want my strap for, I'm drawing a blank right now, the senior moment. This is my lines with the needles on it that I'll be using to hook up. So 3 things that I want to make sure that I have on here. And now I'm ready to start my snap and tap. Make sure that my camera's still going. Okay, I'm always going to start with the red line, which is called the arterial. I'm going to push my clamp up, pull this clamp, give me some room there, and I'm going to keep the air going towards my fist and snapping the line that makes the air move in that direction. And as I come down, I just keep lowering it down until I'm below this. Then I have all the air in the bubble. And there's the tap. Make sure all the air comes out of that little glass bubble. Then you move across. That's when this filter actually comes loose. And some more tap. As you turn this over and watch all the air coming out going up here. And then you want to tap it. And always watch and look and see, did that release it? No, that didn't release any. Tap it like that. I tapped it on this side, then I tapped it on this side. Now I'm going to tap it on this side. And none of those released any air. So I'm going to turn it so and normally I don't do it this way, but I tap it on this side because nothing else got any air out. And that did. I finally got some air out. This one has just really sat here and most of the air is already gone out of it. It didn't have any really trapped in it to come out. So I'll go ahead and put it back up here. Because I've been moving around and I've touched so many different things, at this point I'm going to come back over. I'm going to re-sterilize my hands, because I want to have really good sterile hands when I go to working on the openings to the lines that could be potentially going into my body. And since this line is one that could potentially let stuff into my body and I'm going to be touching it and opening it up, I want good, clean, sterile hands. I also have learned to put my lines over here on the side and to use my lines to kind of trap, and that catches the drip so that it doesn't go into my water detection compartment and set off the alarm, because I'm going to create a drip and let the air out, and just a very small, just for a second, just got the very top of this wet. I'm going to dry that off so that when I come back to touch it again, it doesn't get slippery and I can't turn it. Then I'm going to pull these lines out. And again, I learned to go ahead and get the air out of this line. This was not part of my snap and tap training. This line is one I've learned to snap and tap on my own, because this is a line that you will, that I use and I actively use. I forgot to get my little peanut butter off. Thankfully it's still in good shape and was there. I should have taken that off at the beginning. Now that I have the air out of those lines, I'm going to go ahead and bring the blue line out and do the snap and tap on it. Okay. What we've done is we went with the red line and we snapped it all the way around through the filter and then back to the blue line. It's going from the saline bag all the way through the system and back to the saline bag, and we're trying to flush any little air bubble left in the line, and you want to do snap and tap twice. So I'm going to start over and go back to the arterial line, and I'm going to work it till I get it down. Take my little bulb and check it, make sure that there's no fine bubbles left in it. Come across, pull my filter back out, do another good little snap on it or tap on it. If I've done a good job at the beginning, I don't really expect there to be any air the second go around. Sometimes there's just some that's just been hidden out in there for whatever reason, and it'll give itself up there at the last. So you always want to make sure and check it the second time, but don't be surprised if you don't get any air. Then I'm going to take this cap completely off, and this is where this extra safety feature goes on. So if I see air coming through my line, coming through my filter, and I know that that air is not supposed to be there, I can actually stop the machine, get my deal ready, turn the machine back on and pull that air out, turn it back off, and then I can take that valve and I can get rid of that air and then take the blood that I pulled and put it back in there and put it back in the system, so I didn't lose any blood, but I get the air out. I've had to use that safety feature once or twice when I very first got started, and I can't really tell you what I did to create that air in the line, you know, at the beginning when I did, but I did, and I did get it out, and it does work. So I just keep putting that on there, even though for 2 years, 2.5 years now, I've done nothing but take it off at the end and throw it away. But it's a safety feature, and it's good to have it there in case you do need it. Then I come back over, and the final snap and tap, bring the vascular line, snap it all the way back up to the top. At that point, I'm ready to separate my lines out, pull this line that's got my white clip on it, and press the stop button. That's going to change my numbers over here. At this point, this is where when you start changing these lines, you're actually hooking it up so that it's hooked to the system, and now it will actually have the lines crossed over to where you've got batch coming into it, you've got your blood line hooked up to come into it, and you've got your waste line hooked up to go out from it. That's what these 3 changes that we're fixing to make are going to hook up. I'm using the Next Stage system, and they've done a great job. Everything is color coordinated. The white clip is going to connect to the white flip. So I'm going to pull the line across over here, separate all my lines down here to where I get down to the very last line, and it is going to pull out, if I can get it to. There we got it. And it has a white clip down here. So I'm going to close that white clip. If I had closed that while still in snap and tap, it would have stopped that circulation and it would have alarmed. Then I'm going to close this green tab up here that's above because I'm opening that line up. And then I'm going to open up this first white, and I have them held in my hand, so I've got that between 2 knuckles, and I've got this between my forefinger and my thumb, and I open this one up, and I can just move over between my 2 knuckles and tie it back on, and so the white is white. That leaves me the green, which I have the green back here. This is going to tie it into the dialysate. We close that. That's so that when I open this, it doesn't squirt dialysate all over me. And sometimes those are pretty hard. Sometimes they're pretty easy. And then I go back over to where I've been holding it between them fingers. And just tie that together and make sure that I open up the two green clamps. Now this is tied into dialysate. The next thing I want to do is I want to pull out and get my yellow lines. You go to white, green to green, and then you go yellow to yellow. So I'm going to open up this yellow, and I'm going to bring it around so it's not tangled into anything, to the yellow line coming down for the drain. And this is actually your drain line, which is going to drain the waste. The impurities that's cleaned out of your blood goes into that waste line and actually goes out into the waste line into the sewer system. From that, the only things left is my red and my blue lines, and those are actually, the red and the blue is your arterial and your vascular, which will be going in your arm up here. So these are ready now for me to get my weight and set how much I'm going to take volume-wise, how much I'm going to take in effluent off of my, how much I want to take in ultrafiltration, how much I'm going to try to take the impurities, the water waste I'm going to take off my body today. So I will get my weight. It's connected to my iPad by computer. I take 3 weights, wait for it to give me the beeps that tells me it's ready. I step off, wait for it to register that weight. Then I step back on, it will beep once, which tells me it's weighing me. Then when it beeps a couple of beeps, it tells me it's time to step off so it can register that weight. I have to do that 3 times. When I get 3 weights, then it will average those and tell me how much to take off. First thing I got to do is get my iPad turned on, make sure it's still connected to my next stage router, and then tell it I'm ready to open up for a new treatment. Alright, it's ready for 3 weights. First beat. I apologize for being off screen. This was when I was taking my weights and I did not realize that the camera was not capturing, so I apologize for the long period of being off screen. First beat. Second weight is being registered. First beat. And the third weight. Alright. Now that has told me that I'm ready to switch over the volume. Bring this up to 2.5 liters. Switch back over, and we'll take that off at 1 liter per hour. And that has this ready for me to go. Make sure my lines are all up and clear. It's time to start moving stuff over. This will be the sack that I'll use to have everything that I need to come off the treatment. So here, in just a minute, I'll be changing over to that bag. First, I'm going to get my lines up in front of everything. Got all that done. And this will be where my chair will sit during treatment. And for me, it's just easier for me to get set down as quick as I can and get off my feet. At this time, I go ahead and close off all of my clamps so that there's nothing open, nothing's going to let air into my lines. I shake off a little bit of excess so it doesn't drip back onto my hand. And I have forgotten to open this up over here. So I'm going to turn that away from everything and open up my bag. Put this back over in my hand. Get that worked up in there. And now I'm ready to change over my red and my blue lines, get them tied together, ready to go on treatment. And I'm going to go ahead and take, this was the 2 needles I had up on top. I'm going to open up this red line. I'm going to place this syringe on that red line. Take my little peanut that I've been saving. Put it on this red line. Now that red line is ready for me to go into hookup. Then I take this next syringe, throw that cap away. I'm going to take this blue line. And I'm going to open it up. Put a syringe on there. Then I have my red and my blue lines tied together. I drape that up over there. Now I've got to fill these syringes. I want the full 10 milliliters of saline in here. Again, I'll use that fast motion to get that air to come loose. Push that back up to 10. Take the second one. I'm going to use that same fast motion and then hold it down as that fills up. I'm going to tap on that. Got all the air out of it. Shut that line off. I have to move my waste basket over here. Make sure my line's not going to get tangled in my basket. Drape that back. I'm ready to move these buckets out of my way. just having emergency supplies within reach during treatment. So I pull those parts out so that they're closer to where I can reach them if I needed to in an emergency. I take this pillow and completely set it out of the way during treatment. I pull this part over. And I'll be back in just a minute. I gotta go wash my arm. My tape's kind of come loose off of it today anyway. I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, I'm back. Okay. Just one or two more preparation things and we'll be ready to start hooking up. You've seen so far all the work that it takes just to get ready to get on treatment. Then you have to actually do the treatment. And then you have another hour or so's worth of stuff to do after treatment to get everything cleaned up, to get a new batch started, to get everything wiped down with bleach wipes, and get a sterile, clean environment ready to go for the next batch. But right now, I have to have a standing blood pressure before we go on treatment. Then you have to have a sitting blood pressure. We went from 130 over 74 to 123 over 64. And we went from 101 to 95 on the heart rate. Now we have to have temperature. (97.3). We're not drawing labs today. We have not been hospitalized. No shortness of breath. No palpitations. Yes, we have some swelling and digestive issues. No change in mobility. No access, redness, drainage, or swelling. We do have a 3-0 and a Burette. We're ready to monitor the treatment and register our first vital. So, now we're ready to finish preparation for getting actual needles in and getting hooked up. Once I'm hooked up, I'm no longer able to get up and move around. I will be in my chair for the duration of the treatment. Sorry about that. I always want to take care of all the unpleasantries before I start getting everything ready here to get on. Because once you're on, you're not going to be able to get your arms together and put your hands up to your face like that, because once this arm has needles in it, it's not able to be bent up like it is. And that's what we're ready to start prepping for. That's what these extra alcohol prep pads are. They're to, although I just went and washed with antibiotic soap and got the cream off of my arm. And I'm fixing to get ready to put those needles in, so I want to be wearing a mask until I get everything hooked up and get all the lines secure that are going to have blood coming to and from and out of my body. And you know, when I went into training, they have a one-on-one nurse, and you're in a room, so you're by yourself with no distraction. And of course you can have a loved one in there with you, and you can have someone train with you, so you're not doing it by yourself if you want. If you have to do it by yourself, it's like I said, if an old man like me can do it, you can. Okay, I take the first swab and I clean on both the needle sites. Then I put on a fresh glove, and I'm going to get a fresh alcohol swab, and I'm going to clean the arterial site alone. Then I will take another alcohol swab and clean the venous site. This will be the arterial, which is the lower site in my two sites. And I kind of reach out around it and up and down. I want a good sterile environment there. Then I'm going to take the second one and I'm going to clean the top side. And again, I want to go up and down pretty good. I want to clean all the germs away. Then I'm going to take and put on a fresh glove to actually put my needles in. And this is where we're going to get down to the important stuff. I want to pick both these up. I'm going to slightly move that so it's not in the shipping point. I'm going to make sure the cap is tight, because I've had one of these caps that was loose, and I put it in and I was doing everything while I was messing with the other line. I looked down and I had a big blood deal out here on the table because this cap was not tight and I was oozing out. So I don't want that to start doing anything until I'm ready. So I take and just make sure they're both tight right at the beginning. Okay, always feel for the knob on this, which tells me that I've got my needle turned right and I'm ready for an insertion. And when you see the blood coming up and down, it means you have a good flash. And really start getting that tape down, get it in place so it's not going to try to come out. I don't want that moving around. So I got one tape across there, and then I have two small ones that are all set out in order over here when I start. And then I have the one with the pad that actually covers up the needle site. So if it decides to bleed, it's going to bleed out into that gauze, not just bleed freely bleeding everywhere. And that will generally cause it to catch enough there to start stopping the bleeding. It will cause it to go ahead and clot up and not be a serious issue. I'm ready for my second needle. Again, I'm feeling for the little knob to make sure I have this turned the proper way. And then I'm moving up a little bit. And I rotate my sights. I don't use the same sight. This is not buttonholes. These are 15 gauge. These are about a full 1-inch needle going into my arm. I got a good flash. That means I'm seeing the pulse in both lines in the blood that's coming out in the end there. And I'm going to take my 2 little tapes that I put on there to help secure that line and make sure it's not going to come loose. Then I'm going to take my arm strap off. Hang it up so it stays in a clean, sterile environment. And this is when I put on, I pre-opened that package so it wasn't hard for me to get this out because I don't want to move my arms around with these needles any more than I have to. And then I cover this one up with a gauze. Now that's a blood sensor, which when you're doing solo, you need an alarm. So if this, normally if you're going to bleed, this is where you're going to bleed because this is under pressure coming back into your body. And if it's going to create a bleed, this is normally where it would happen. And this is a sensor that hooks up to an alarm, so if that blood starts coming out, it fills that pad up on that sensor, and as soon as it detects that blood in there, even a small amount, before it's even full, it will alarm and let you know that you have an issue that you need to start working on. Okay, at this point I'm going to hold both my lines up. I have one last piece of tape, and it's so I can put some slack in this. So I hold my arm straight, push some slack into it so I've got a little, like an S-curve in my lines, so that if I do move my arms, I've got some flex in there. And now I'm ready to go ahead and purge the air. Got the air purged in my arterial. Now I'm going to take this saline syringe, it's only got 7 milliliters in it, and that leaves me 3 milliliters of extra. And what I'm going to do is I want to pull that extra 3 liters into the syringe to make sure that this is open and flowing, and then I want to push it back and pull it again and push it back, and as long as that's got free movement, I'm okay. Now I'm ready to purge the air out of my vascular line. Make sure that's closed. And I'm going to bring this up, and I'm going to do the same thing to my vascular line that I did to the arterial. I'm going to open this line up, make sure I've got that closed so I'm not going to bleed everywhere. Put this syringe on, open this, make sure that's going to pull, make sure then that it's going to pull and push. That's working fine. This is where I go at the beginning of my treatment, and this is the 4,000 units of heparin, or 4 milligrams, and put that on. I'm going to again pull it and push. What I'm doing is mixing that into my blood system. And now I have my lines hooked to my body. It's time to get my lines hooked to my machine. Okay. Always want to take the red or the arterial loose. first. And I've got that messed up, so I'm going to have to turn that around, close that up. Okay, now then. Alright, red line is hooked up. Make sure you put the clip on. Now I can open up my mask. And I'm ready to hook my blood sensor. I have to hold that line in my teeth. I don't know any other way to do that. That works. I get it. My green light is on, means my blood sense is working. I'm ready to open up my 4 clamps, which actually opens up all the lines, so I am fully hooked to my machine now. So I'm going to hit the go button, and then I'm going to enter some information. I did take my heparin. I did take 4,000 milligrams, and I'm putting that in via the cartridge, and I hit save, and I'm ready to speed this up. If everything works right, I can speed up to 450 liters per minute in circulation, and then I can turn up the time, the volume, on how much I'm using in volume. It said 99.59 hours. That's because I didn't have my volume on my dialysate. I've got that turned up to 13.3. My time is now at 3 hours and 10 minutes left on this treatment. And that was a 14, which generally means that whenever you change that volume rate, it sets off that 14 alarm because it thinks that something's going on there because that changed. And when I change that volume rate or change that volume amount, and normally every time I do that, right after I change that volume amount, I get a 14, and I just simply silence it, stop, and restart, and it just clears itself up. And now I'm waiting until that 3 hours and 10 minutes or 15, whatever that was. When that gets down to 2 hours, I will take that second dose of heparin, and I will insert that via the line over here, and that's when I'll take that second dose of heparin. so that it keeps my blood from trying to clot up and get too thick in the line during treatment. Now I just wait every 30 minutes. Actually, I need a blood pressure at the beginning, and my moving around is set off that alarm. I'm going to silence that, finish getting my blood pressure. Yep, it errored. I moved around too much, so I restart it. Hopefully this will help you see what all is involved, and in fact, yes, it is work, yes, but hang on, let me get this recorded. Hopefully this will help you to see what you might experience if you were in fact, and you know, I wear my headlamp because whenever I'm trying to put my needles in, I need to be able to see what I'm doing. I need to be able to see when I'm drawing my vials of medicine, how much I'm drawing, and if I have good lighting, I see better. So I wear my headlamp during most of my startup process, and I will turn it back on when I'm ready to come off. So that basically is it. Every 30 minutes you have to take a blood pressure. It records it to make sure that your blood pressures aren't dropping too much, taking the fluids off. If your blood pressure falls too low, you can either give yourself some saline. Normally I don't give myself saline unless I'm starting to get lightheaded or dizzy, or I'm starting to cramp. If it's just my blood pressures are starting to get so low, after they go to a certain point, I'm going to turn that ultrafiltration off, and I wait about 5 to 10 minutes, and I check my blood pressure again. If it hasn't started coming back up, I might give myself a little saline, but I try not to give myself back fluid if I've already taken that fluid off. I don't want to give it back to myself unless I absolutely have to. There have been a few times when I've had to, when I've just started cramping really severely, or I've had cramps in my legs before, and you know, if I get a severe, just sudden severe cramp, the only way to stop that is to give yourself some saline. So yeah, I've done that before, but haven't had to do that in a long time. That was back, you know, earlier when I was really just learning how to do all this, and learning how to do, when you do things at a slower rate, your body doesn't react bad to it as quickly. When you try to speed things up, the more you try to speed things up, the more you're apt to have, or the more you're likely to encounter issues. A lot of those issues just seem to go away if you slow things down and ease into it. So that's it, we're set up. We have 23 minutes before we have to take our next blood pressure. And normally at this time I would start watching my YouTube videos, but my camera's set up over there for videoing, and I can't reach it because I'm tied to my machine, so here we are. If I had thought just a little bit more through, I might have set that tripod just a little bit closer to where I could maybe reach it. I don't have anything close enough to me to reach over there and bring the tripod any closer.